Hello, and welcome to this video on grammatical tone. People say that more than half of the world's languages are tone languages. What do we mean by that?
A tone language is one where the pitch of the voice makes a difference in the meaning of individual words, and often in grammatical meaning too. People usually think of tone as making a difference in the meaning of words. We call this lexical tone. Lexical tone distinguishes one word from another word. For example, the Mono language has awa and awa, meaning diarrhea and fear. Below, the usual phonetic marks are given here for high tone, low tone, and falling tone. Many languages have more tones than these.
Then what is grammatical tone? How is it different?
Grammatical tone makes a difference in grammatical constructions. For example, in the Maasai language, we have something like me sisi olabani and me sisi olabani. These differ only by tone on the first word, me sisi, me sisi. The first sentence means the healer will not be praised or is not praised, but the second sentence means the healer should be praised. As you can see, grammatical tone can often be very important, and if you don't spell these differently, the reader won't know how to read it or what the meaning is.
Can you give us some more examples of grammatical tone?
Grammatical tone can affect a lot of things. Here are just a few examples. Grammatical tone affects the verb tense in Mbembe of Nigeria. So we have okon, which means you sang, but okon means you should sing. The Mada language of Nigeria makes a difference between some singular and plural nouns by tone. So ren is the difference between pot and pots. In Maasai, again of Kenya, it can make a difference between the subject and the object of a sentence. Elokunya versus elukunya, something like that.
Interesting. These are all African languages. Is there grammatical tone in other areas of the world?
Yes, grammatical tone is common in Africa, but it also occurs in some languages in Asia, the Americas, and in New Guinea too. For example, in the Gali language of Nepal, making a verb causative gives it a high tone. See, the number 5 indicates high tone on the second example. In the San Miguel el Grande Mixtec language of Mexico, the imperfective aspect makes the tone on a verb high on the first syllable, no matter what it starts on. So we see the second word is imperfective with a high tone. In the Iao language of Papua in Indonesia, the verb ba, to come, can actually have 8 different tones with 8 different grammatical meanings. And of course, this is not a complete list of what's possible.
I can see that marking grammatical tone can be very important for people reading correctly.
Yes, our goal in orthography is to make the meaning of the language as clear as possible so people can read well. With lexical tone, think about 2 words that differ only by tone. In a story, you can often tell which word is meant because of the context, what words are around it. For example, in the Koma language of Ghana, oil and back of your head differ only by tone. In the sentence, he bought a bottle of what? I think you can tell which word it should be. So, In some languages, you do not need to mark lexical tone. But if a language has grammatical tone, there are often few clues from the surrounding words to tell you which meaning is meant. For example, if grammatical tone is not marked, then you really cannot say if what you read is, "The healer should be praised," or "The healer will not be praised," in our earlier Maasai example. It could be either one. So it is often more important to mark grammatical tone than lexical tone. One linguist from Papua New Guinea wrote, "I have seen people not being able to read what they wrote themselves because they couldn't remember what tone pattern they had in mind."
All right, so how do we mark these grammar differences in an orthography? This will be different than a purely linguistic transcription, I'm thinking.
There are two major ways of marking grammatical tone. The first is to mark it somewhat phonetically, close to how it is actually pronounced. A phonetic marking usually uses diacritics or accent marks. In Rangi from Tanzania, the simple past has an accent on the last syllable, and other verb forms have an accent on the first stem vowel. The second way is to mark the grammatical meaning more directly. Marking the meaning directly is done in a lot of different ways.
So, what do you mean by marking the meaning? How do you do that?
I mean that there is some sort of marking that does not tell you directly that the word is high tone or low tone, but the marking says, "This verb is past tense," or "This noun is the subject of the sentence," or some other grammar. There are different ways to mark the grammatical tone in the orthography. One is by using accent marks. This accent may represent the phonetic tone, as we talked about earlier, or it may be more abstract and mark the meaning, which is what we're talking about now. For example, the Gam language of South Sudan marks a future with an accent on the pronoun. The difference between "I beat the cow" and "I will beat the cow" is marked with an accent on the pronoun. This actual tone is different when different pronouns are used, but the reader sees the accent mark and he thinks future and pronounces it with the correct tone. A second way is to use consonants that are not used in the rest of the orthography. In Gangam of Togo, the letter H at the end of a verb is used for the imperfect aspect, is destroying. The apostrophe is used for the completive, has destroyed. In pronunciation, these are distinguished only by tone.
Interesting. Are there other ways?
A third way is to use punctuation marks, like this one from Budu of the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have Wabenda, and depending on if it has no punctuation, an equal sign, or a colon, it can mean you hit, you will hit, or you have hit. Again, the tone of all these is different, but it is the meaning that is marked. Using punctuation may interfere with some types of software, and I'll mention more later on that. A fourth way of marking grammatical tone could be doubling consonants or doubling vowels. Use this only if your language does not make a difference between long and short vowels and consonants. For example, the Jurmoto language of South Sudan doubles the D in this particular word to make a difference between he or she is and you are. And there can be many other solutions too. These are just a few examples. You and local speakers can be creative.
Using punctuation marks looks kind of interesting. What is the problem you mentioned with software?
Punctuation marks are not letters, and in computer programs, punctuation marks act differently than letters. So some software programs will break up words like wa equals benda and treat this as two words, even if you don't want it to. So if you are searching for a word or doing a spell check, you might not get the answers you are looking for. But on phones or in printing, there is usually no problem. And sometimes you can use a custom keyboard to help. See the video on technical issues for more details.
Which method would be best for someone's language? And how do you decide this?
Really, it varies with your situation. What works in one language may not work in another. Like other orthography decisions, you should consider usability and acceptability. First, how do lexical tone and grammatical tone work in your language? What do people need in order to read well? If you are marking lexical tone with accents, you probably don't want to use accents to mark grammatical tone. You should probably use another method. Notice that I'm saying probably and not definitely. But probably the most important thing is, what do people prefer? Just like other orthography decisions. Does tone marking bring up any social or political issues? What do neighboring languages do? Does one way of marking just look better to them? And there may be other things depending on your situation.
For grammatical tone, it sounds like marking the meaning is often a better choice than marking the phonetics of a word, how it is pronounced.
Marking the meaning directly is often easier for readers to understand and easier to remember. Also, marking how tone is pronounced can get complicated, since there can be different phonological processes that affect that. See the video on phonological levels for more explanation of this. Like so many other decisions in orthography, it is not always possible to get an ideal solution, but you can make improvements. In one language in East Africa, some speakers resisted doing any tone marking, but no one could read it. After discussion, they agreed to mark some of the tones that were recommended, but not all. Even marking some of these improved people's reading a lot.
In this video, we talked about grammatical tone, how it is different from lexical tone, and some of the many ways you can mark it in an orthography. We see that it is quite an important issue to deal with, so people will be able to read with understanding.